Hi, dreamers. You might know that I have quite a following on Twitter with about 18,000 people. And one of the things I've heard quite a bit is that a 401k is a scam. And I really thought people were joking or just trying to get engagement with that. So I just innocently asked a question, thinking that really nobody would respond. I said, I used to think this was just sarcasm, but do you really think 401ks are a scam? And to my surprise, about 22,000 people looked at this. And 100 people replied, which is kind of high. And these are the kinds of responses I was expecting. They are not a scam, no, especially if there's any type of employer match. But then I started seeing other responses like, no, they aren't scams, but maybe they aren't for everyone. For the normal person who's going to work 9 to 5 for the rest of their lives and is not good at self-discipline, then maybe that's the best option. But for some of us who want to go down the route you did, we probably should weigh the pros and cons and understand the different opportunity costs before deciding how much to allocate to our 401ks. Or if you're in Canada, RRSPs. And as the day went on, I actually got more of those kinds of responses than I was expecting. Like, yes, they are. And there's another term for it called table scraps. And this was not the intention of the guy that invented it. Yes, absolutely it is. And so you can see them all here. They are a scam. Yes. Biggest scam ever. 100% it's a scam. And I'm only doing it because my company has a 6% match. And that the account itself is not a scam, but there are scammy things about it, like the near elimination of pensions. So what's interesting about this is I got about half saying for sure it's not a scam, but the other half saying, yeah, it kind of is. And some people saying that they are doing a hybrid. Like, for many years I contributed above the company match, but in the last few years, I cut down to just the company match. One thing I heard over and over was that you can't take your money out until 59 and a half, and that really rubs people the wrong way. So I thought I'd create a dedicated video to look at the facts and the pros and cons around 401ks and pre-tax accounts versus other kinds of accounts and other ways to save and invest, and which one actually turns out to be the better option. So today we'll look at those numbers. And speaking of numbers, in the few seconds I took to record this, you can see how many notifications I get pretty much every single minute. Oof, just went to 11. All right, let's look at this 401k question. All right, so the first thing I noticed was that there's a surprising amount of articles all about this dilemma, actually. And the crux of the decision is this. While pre-tax 401k deposits offer an upfront tax break, the funds grow tax deferred, meaning you'll owe levies upon withdrawal. And by contrast, Roth 401k contributions happen after taxes, but your future earnings grow tax-free. And so it goes on to say that most plans have both options, and that roughly 88% of 401k plans offered Roth accounts in 2021, which means the share of 401k plans that offer Roths has almost doubled since 2011. And on that note, I was reading an article meant for employers, and in this article they talk to business owners directly, and they tell them, you are not required to offer these plans, but it would be a smart move to do so, and that they can offer both pre-tax 401k plans or after-tax 401k plans. And it goes on to say that these after-tax 401k plans allow the employee to save a lot more every single year versus the pre-tax plans. So we'll take a look at that again in a moment. So let's break this down a little bit farther. TIAA had a good article here about after-tax Roth versus pre-tax plan contributions and which one is right for you. And they've got this kind of handy-dandy chart here. So in terms of contributions, in 2024, you can contribute up to $23,000, or if you're age 50 or older, up to $30,500. And those limits are the same for Roth IRA. But the big difference is, on pre-tax, you are taxed on the withdrawals because you contributed money before taxes are assessed. Therefore, you are taxed when you withdraw. And on the Roth side, your withdrawals are typically tax-free. And in the fine print here, there's some of the key information that everybody should know, which is withdrawals of earnings prior to age 59 and a half are subject to ordinary income tax and a 10% penalty, which if you saw my little known secret video you might get a clue on how to avoid that 10% penalty. So take a look at that if you're looking to take out money prior to 59 and a half, because I've got a way for you to do that too. But there are a few other options you can do other than just a pre-tax 401k or a Roth. I found another article in Yahoo Finance. How do my investment benefits compare pre-tax versus after-tax? And in the meat of this article, they talk about the fact that pre-tax is not always the best, that sums invested pre-tax in IRAs and similar retirement don't completely evade taxation, and that taxes on contributions as well as any earnings from investments in the account are only deferred, and that savers will owe taxes later at their then current rate of taxation when they withdraw funds from the account. So, if your individual tax rate is lower in retirement, pre-tax investing can be advantageous. However, if you earn a lot of income over your career and you have a large retirement nest egg, your required minimum distributions, otherwise known as RMDs, and other sources of income could mean that your income and tax bracket are actually higher after you've retired than when you put your money away pre-tax, especially when you were very young and in a lower tax bracket decades before. And it's kind of interesting because I've heard people talk about this concept of the fact that quote unquote taxes are on sale right now, and that inevitably taxes are likely to go up in terms of percentage as the years and decades go on. So if you assume that's the case, you could assume that your individual tax rate might actually be lower, especially in the younger years, than they might be, say, 20 to 40 years in the future, when you're a lot older with a lot more money. And so if the individual's tax rate will be higher in retirement than it is at the time the investment was made, it might be better to invest after-tax monies in a Roth-type retirement account. Or one could argue, any type of after-tax account, because after paying taxes at a relatively low rate when contributing, funds in these accounts grow then tax-free and can be withdrawn later without owing any taxes. And so they talk through one scenario in particular. For example, if you want to invest $10,000 in an after-tax account and you're in a 25% tax bracket, you'll have to earn approximately $13,333 and pay $3,333 in taxes in order to have $10,000 available to invest. And if that $10,000 earns 5% annually for 10 years, it would be worth $16,289. But say you invested that $13,333 in a pre-tax account, a regular 401k. After 10 years, you'll have $21,718. And if you withdraw the full amount and your rate is still 25%, you'll owe $5,429 in taxes, and essentially be left with the same $16,289 as you got with the after-tax investment. But if, however, during the interim you had retired and your tax rate dropped to 15%, you'd only owe $3,258 on emptying the pre-tax account, and that would leave you with $18,641. In this case, the pre-tax investment produces a larger return net of taxes. However, if you're in a 15% bracket when you fund an after-tax investment, and then you're in a higher tax bracket, say 25% when you retire, that situation is reversed. In that case, you'd need about $11,765 to have $10,000 to invest after tax. And again, you'd wind up with $16,289, which you could withdraw tax-free. And so in summary, investing $11,765 pre-tax at 5% gives you $19,164 after 10 years, a sizable increase. If you withdraw that amount when you are in the 25% bracket, however, your nominal tax liability will be $4,791, leaving you with just $14,373. And in this case, the after-tax investment generates a better overall result by about $1,916, which is the difference between $14,373 from the pre-tax method and $16,289 using an after-tax approach. Whew, this is getting complicated, but don't worry, I'm going to summarize this all at the end. Let's talk about one other concept. What's the difference between after-tax contributions to a 401k plan versus a Roth 401k. And so in this article, it talks about the fact that in addition to pre-tax and Roth 401k contributions, some plans offer the ability to make voluntary after-tax contributions to the 401k plan. And at first glance, you might think the Roth 401k and after-tax contributions are the same thing, since both of those contributions are made with after-tax dollars. But in reality, there's really important differences to understand. And I'm just going to jump to the net. Withdrawals are tax-free as long as withdrawal requirements are met. And with the regular after-tax 401k, withdrawals are taxed as ordinary income, but just the earnings, not the actual contribution, which you've already paid tax on. The 2024 contribution limit is $23,000. But look at this. The after-tax contribution limit on a 401k is $69,000. So you can put away a lot more money in just an after-tax 401k plan. Both contributions and earnings can be rolled into a Roth IRA on the Roth 401k. And on the after-tax contributions, the contributions can be rolled over into a Roth IRA. All right, so let's summarize some of the things that we've learned. In terms of a 401k, a pro is that you get the upfront tax break. And if there's a company match, say 2, 4, or 6%, you get an equal contribution from your company, which is free money that might be worth matching. On the con side, you do lock that money away until 59.5. And another con is this concept that taxes might be on sale now and might actually be higher in the future. Another con is that if you need the emergency cash, you don't have access to it right away. And if you want to retire early, it's not the best plan, actually. And just to be clear, we're talking about a few different concepts here. A pre-tax 401k, a post-tax Roth, a post-tax 401k, and then another thing we haven't talked about is just a taxable account. So in a pre-tax 401k, this might make sense if maybe you're on the low side in terms of revenue and earnings. It would make sense if your company match is huge. It would also make sense if you're going to have a small nest egg with relatively small RMDs. And so if you're a low earner, most experts say that you should really focus in on maximizing your post-tax Roth first, and then go to your pre-tax 401k. But if you're a high earner, you might want to strongly consider, after meeting the company match, focusing in on post-tax 401k, because your income later on in retirement might actually be the same or higher, and your nest egg is going to be relatively large, and so your RMDs are going to be relatively large. But let's do one more thing and take a look at a calculator. So here's a link to a calculator from Schwab, which I'll include in the description of this video. And it's got these nice sliders so you can look at any scenario and really see the result. And so here you can see years to retirement at 20 years. Let's say your annual salary is, say, $50,000. Your savings rate is about 5%, and your annual rate of return about 8%. And then let's say your tax rate is 25% now. You've got about 20 years in retirement, an annual rate of return in retirement of 4%. And let's say that tax rate is lower in your retirement, 12%. In this particular scenario, the traditional 401k represents a pre-tax account, whereas the Roth represent a post-tax account. And here you can see the post-tax account being higher. So let's say we change the tax rate in retirement to the same as it is today. And when you do that, you see that the after-tax Roth gets even better in terms of the scenario. And if we take the tax rate and we make it even higher in retirement, that makes the after-tax contribution an even better scenario. And you can change any number of these things: what your annual salary is, what your savings rate is, what the estimated rate of return is. But you can see the main difference in the scenarios is really the tax rate. It's whether or not the tax rate is going to be the same or lower in retirement than it is during working years. And the reality is that unless you think that your tax rate during your working years is going to be way higher than the tax rate in your retirement, in almost every single scenario, the after-tax contribution is going to give you a better return. And so is the 401k a scam? Well, I would say this. In terms of next steps, I would definitely think about matching your corporate match because that's free money. But the other thing you could do is check into your employer's after-tax programs and ask if they have an after-tax 401k. And if they don't, the other thing you could do is lobby the HR director to put one into place, because that's an option that they have as an employer that they just may not have thought to do. And it's relatively easy to set up, especially when they're not doing a match on it. And the last thing I would just want to leave you with is this. Is that if you do want to retire early like myself, and you're okay with paying taxes in the year for the year instead of a deferred tax plan that does make you wait until 59 and a half, you might want to also consider a taxable brokerage. Which, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I have about $1 million in taxable brokerages, which has essentially been key for my early retirement. So my final conclusion on all of this is, are 401ks a scam? Well, I wouldn't exactly call them a scam, but I would say that when you take a close look at the numbers, and you might want to consult a certified financial planner on your particular situation, the after-tax options of Roth or 401k and a taxable account might actually make more sense for you depending on your strategy. So I hope that was helpful for you, and let me know what you think in the comments. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this dividend income update. And if you want a richer, real-time experience with me, you can always follow me on Instagram or X. And if you're doing your own research using Seeking Alpha, feel free to find the link below to subscribe if you want, no pressure. As always, I encourage you to do your own research, then implement and learn by putting it into practice. And as a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, so keep in mind these videos are for entertainment and inspiration only. I'll see you on the flip side.